And so this presentation is going to be just a couple of things that I want to share. And these are the bigger topics about, kind of why this book exists and what I think, uh, what I really believe you'll be able to get from it when that's finally in your hand. And so, kind of going forward and thinking about what that means to you. What does it mean when you say, hey, my hand goes up, I want to make what it is that I see my best, I want to step that up one level. And the three areas that we talk about in the book are working smart, thinking big, and making more. And I got to tell you, it's a little bit of a surprise. That third one, we're getting a lot of interest with people because obviously people are asking, well, Jason, what is it the more that you're thinking people want to make? And there's an activity that you'll read about in the book when you get it, which I actually encourage people to look out over the past week or maybe even the past month and just make a little list, whether you handwrite this or put it on a whiteboard or open up a Word document. But what I ask you to do is to write down what you made last month, what you make this week. And in the book, I describe, some of the things that I make in a typical week. I make friends, I make memories, I make opportunities, I make possibility. And these are the things that I'm seeing more and more these days, where people are ending the day wondering, what is it that I'm producing? What is it that I'm creating? And so to get started, there's three main areas that all of this work is going to dive into. And when you get into the book and when you think about this over the next month, I'll really ask you to consider these three. I'm calling them the three ologies of a productive day. So the first one that we discuss is what I call the psychology of a productive day. And if you think about it, wherever you are, I know I've got people on the West Coast, I've got people on the East Coast, I've got people in Europe. So you're at different parts of your day right now. But if you consider for yourself at the beginning of a day, when you start to think about what's going to unfold in the next 10 or 12 or 18 hours, we immediately start thinking about that and planning that. And so if you study you, if you give yourself the gift of your own attention, I say sometimes, and I start to think about, all right, Jason, how do I think? What do I do when I plan out a day? And becoming aware of that, becoming conscious of it. It's as simple as pulling out a piece of paper and making a to-do list for the day. We can go up one more level. Maybe you and your small team, or maybe you and an accountability buddy, you sit down at the beginning of the day and kind of make a pact or make a deal about what's going to unfold that day. All the way to one of my mentors, Marshall Goldsmith. He has a program where he and his coach, they speak every day at 9 p.m. and they plan out tomorrow. Now, when I asked him about this, I said, Marshall, you travel around the world. He's in India, he's in Asia, he's in Africa, he's in Europe. He says, Jason, wherever I am, at 9 p.m., I call my coach, and he said, I'll be honest, sometimes I have to leave a voicemail. But it was interesting to me because he was able to wrap his thinking and his planning around something that he could do. Now, that leads us to the second thing, right, which is the sociology of a productive day. So I'm on my way to the office. I'm on the way to a client site. I start thinking about my day. Now I need to figure out how to communicate that planning. And suffice it to say, in the book and as you go through the next month or so, what I'll encourage you to do is to think about the ways that people communicate. And I've for years have really been interested in studying the audio, visual, and kinesthetic methods of communication. Now, I don't weight one higher than the other. I don't only do one. This presentation is an example of auditory and visual. I could have made it kinesthetic by sending out a handout for you to print. That is the audio, listen to what I'm sharing. Visual, take a look at what I'm sharing. Kinesthetic, hold something in your hand or write something down. And what I found is that if I mix those three communication methods around my, I'll call it sociology, right? The study of the people and the environment that I work in, the effectiveness increases. It's easier for me to share something if I can attack it from those three different angles. And then, of course, in a productive day, I've got this thing called technology. And in a moment, as those of you who are listening to this, if you have an idea, do I remember that idea? Do I write that idea on a piece of paper? Do I pull out my mobile device and email myself an idea? But when I talk about technology, I'm really specifically looking at how do I delegate and track the planning that I'm doing. Now, delegation, we need to be careful here because there's a lot of people on this call and there's a lot of people I work with who do not have the luxury of delegating to other people. And I say all the time that my number one delegation tool or my number one delegation place is actually my calendar. My second delegation place is some kind of a to-do list structure. When I'm in the office, sometimes I'll delegate something to the whiteboard. That's my reminder that I need to follow up with something. When I'm on the road, I'll add something to a task list in my mobile device. That's a reminder that I need to track that planning over time. So those are the three things to think about as we get started. The four resources that I address, and when you get your copy of the book, you're going to see this 3 different times. I address this topic in 3 different chapters. And they go in this order. So if I want to have a productive day tomorrow, if I want to have a productive week next week, one of the things that I need to take a look at is how am I using my time? For those of you who are morning people, for those of you who are evening people, you have those 24 hours in a day, right? You have the time available to you. More and more these days, I've been breaking my work, and then I've been working with clients on this as well, where I'm breaking their work into 15-minute chunks. And not because 15 minutes is a magic number, but what I found are 2 things. The first one, I can imagine what 15 minutes is, right? I know what I can do in 15 minutes. I mean, on the physical level, I can write 3 thank you cards. I could run 2 miles. I could ride my bicycle 4 miles. There's the 15-minute block. I understand what that means. On the business side of things, in 15 minutes, I can create the beginning of a project plan. Not the entire plan, but the beginning of that project plan. In 15 minutes, I can read about 20 pages of a book. I can read a PDF that someone sent me to review for an upcoming meeting. So that 15-minute chunk, the first thing is I know what that means. I know what that encapsulates. I know what I can do in that time. And then the second reason that I'm breaking my work into these chunks of 15 minutes is it's doable. And I don't know about you, those of you listening to this, but when I think about doing something for an hour or for a morning or for an entire day, I kind of get lost in the details of that. So by taking a look at that first resource, time, then we go into energy. And when I'm in a seminar or when I'm talking to someone live, I'll often draw an arrow going up and another arrow going down. One arrow of the up energy, right? What do I do early in the day, middle of the day, at the end of the day that brings me energy, that increases my energy for the day? And then, of course, what happens during the day to bring my energy down? And so if you think about it to yourself, what are the things that when you have an experience that lifts you up or those around you up, what could you do to replicate that? And one of the things that I know over and over again, and this is working in the private sector, in the public sector, with my own family, there's something about acknowledgement and completion that increases our energy. On the other side, if I get through the end of a day and I have not been acknowledged, if I have not finished things, I may experience a lessened energy outlook during that day. So hopefully the question you're asking yourself is, well, Jason, what could I do to increase my energy, or what would happen to lower my energy? And what we found is that there's this third resource, focus, right? It's limited. I only have so much of it. Call this attention span. Now, if you go back, remember I was talking about those 15-minute increments. When I'm thinking about focus and attention span, I know that there's a limit. Now, maybe it's longer than 2 minutes and less than 60 minutes, but I know that there's a certain amount of time when I'm thinking about something, I can get in there and I can really focus on what it is that I need to be engaged in. When I think about focus, I think about how fleeting it is, how fast it goes. Have you ever been reading a book and you get to the bottom of the page of what you're reading and you can't remember what you just read? You have no idea. Or maybe you've gotten up from one room of your house, got to another room, and forgot why you were there. All of those things to me are relative to focus. And if you were going to write things down, or if I were doing this live and you could watch me on the whiteboard or on the flip chart, I would write focus to finish. Because what we found is that when we finish things, we have a boost in focus, we have a boost in energy, and our time is, well, it's used a little bit better. The fourth limited resource, and maybe the word limited resource doesn't quite translate. What limits my resources is the ecosystem that I'm working in. And when I think about the ecosystem, I think about the environment that I'm spending my work time in. I think about tools, I think about colleagues, I think about the gear, I think about everything that goes into making my workspace work for me. Now, if you just looked at those four things, time, energy, focus, and your own workflow ecosystem, then you're going to start to wrap yourself around, well, how do I get more out of the day? How do I perform at a higher level? One of the activities, and this is in chapter 1 of the book, it's called I'm at My Best When. If any of you have been to a seminar with me in the past year or so, you've seen me walk people through this. And at the top of a piece of paper, what I recommend you do is you write down those 3 words, right? At my best, and then you take a look, you spend some time, you fill in that paper with the when. Right? I'm at my best when I eat a balanced breakfast. I'm at my best when I acknowledge someone on my team for great work. I'm at my best when I reach out to a mentor, to a coach for advice. And if you give yourself some time, if you give yourself some energy and some focus, and you look around your ecosystem, what you may recognize or realize that it'll be very apparent to you when you're at your best. Personally, for me, I know that if I can move through a day where I'm completing things, it's probably one of the main reasons that I wanted to do this conference call so early in the morning, because I wanted on the West Coast, I wanted to give people the opportunity to start their day with this concept of bringing those 3 areas to begin with, right? The psychology, sociology, and technology of productivity. To dive in to get real specific about how to maximize and utilize those 4 limited resources. How do I use my 15-minute blocks during a day? How do I maximize my energy? You know, when I'm thinking about energy, I consider the fact that there's people who are born or they're natural morning people, right? The sun comes up, they're ready for the day, they're ready to get engaged. And on the other side, there's some other people who they actually kick into gear. They find their stride later in the day, maybe the 2 or the 3 or the 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I even have worked with people who they actually came alive. They have their best, most creative and innovative thinking at nighttime, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. When I understand those energy cycles, I can more appropriately direct my focus toward what it is that I'm going to need to do. You know, one more thing, when you think about that ecosystem that you're working in, when you're thinking about getting your work done in a day, I'm going to guess that for most people, there's a place that they go to. There's a conference room on the floor. Maybe on their way to work, they stop at a coffee shop for an extra couple of moments and think about their day. Or maybe there's someone that they reach out to invite them to lunch or to coffee. You know, if I go to lunch with one of my mentors and I bring one of the biggest situations or circumstances that I'm dealing with, she or he may be able to give me some ideas that I haven't had yet. And so this idea of, for me, you know, one of my main areas of focus is completion, that focus to finish. How do I get something, work on something, continue on something, and then finish that thing? And then how do I bring that timeline in just a little bit closer? So as you think about the things that you're going to be doing relative to making your best better, probably the easiest place to start, probably, right? Just to get started would be to pull out a piece of paper, identify maybe 3 to 5 things where you're at your best. And the couple of comments that I always make when I'm working with clients here is make those I'm at my best when statements 100% in my control. And I did share with you, some of mine. I'll just go through 2 really quick. So the first one is I'm at my best when I eat a balanced breakfast, right? 100% in my control. Whether I'm traveling, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in the field, it's up to me to be able to put nutrition in early in the morning. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, but Jason, what if you're traveling one day and the plane is delayed or the flight lands late or something happens? Well, remember, because it's 100% in my control, I have to do things to keep control of that. How do I do it? I travel with food. Literally, gang, I have a bag of nuts, I've got fruit, I've got oatmeal, I've got one of those protein bars. And yes, in over 11 years of traveling, over 200 days a year, trust me, things happen. But it's back on my side. It's back on my control. And then the second example that I'll give you, I'm at my best when I acknowledge someone for something they did that day. And I travel with thank you cards in my Moleskine journal. If we sat down one day and you said, hey, Jason, show me your thank you card, I have always got a thank you card with a stamp ready to go. Now, do I send a thank you card each and every single day? No, but I bet I get a couple in a week. And then other days, it's an email or a voicemail or just simply reaching out and patting someone on the back to let them know thanks. As you're getting started, as you're about to continue on with your day, whether you're calling in from Europe or the East Coast, wherever you are in your time zone, as you just get started, remember, making your best better isn't about changing everything. For me, it's about studying what you're already doing at work, studying how you're already thinking, identify what you're already making, and then adding those explanations, adding that just little bit of focus. I'm going to work a little bit smarter. I'm going to think a little bit bigger, and I want to make a little bit more. So what I wanted to do was leave a couple of minutes. I know several of you have called in from all over the world, and I thought what I'd do is open it up if there's anything that is specific or on your mind. If you want to ask any questions about the book or the writing process, I can answer any of those. I've got about 7 more minutes that we scheduled to be here together. But let me just open it up and say, if anybody would like to make a comment, we'd love to hear that. And if I could share a little bit more, ask away. I think it's an interesting way to go about it. My safe zone is if you think that would help, let's run an experiment. And the experiment may be something like, for you, Dan, it might be something like for the next 5 days, I'm going to be aware of 15-minute increments through the day. I'm not asking you to pull out a timer and for the next 150 hours break everything down into 15-minute chunks. But maybe you sit down and you know that it's 9 o'clock in the morning and you don't have another meeting until 10:30. In those 90 minutes, what I might consider doing is picking 6 subsections of one big project to work on. Give you an example. When I have an article that I have due to the editor, I usually have 3 writing sessions. The first one is let me just pull my ideas together and kind of think about what it is that I need to be working on. The second one is let me draft that article. And the third one is let me complete that. In that first 90 to 120 minute session, and by the way, I'm trying to do this with as few interruptions as possible. I might abscond myself to the back office here in the house. I've even gone to a coffee shop early one morning. On a travel day, I might get to the airport an extra 2 hours or hour and a half early. But instead of sitting down and thinking, I'm going to write for 90 minutes, what I consider doing is I'm going to write in 6 15-minute blocks. And yeah, I may even plan that out. I'm going to spend 15 minutes identifying the conclusion of the article. I'm going to spend 15 minutes thinking about the main points of the article. 15 minutes looking at the structure of the story that I want to tell of working with a client. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, if you think that that might assist you, let's run an experiment and do that for 5 projects or 5 days. And then that way you get a little bit more sense of, will this work for me? Does it work for me to chunk things down into smaller bite sizes? And then at the end of that, look back and pat myself on the back. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have anybody following me around all day long telling me what a good job I'm doing. So if I can do a little bit of that for myself, I might gain that momentum I need.
I have a
Wonderful technique I learned from a mentor of mine probably about 15 years ago. And if you could just everybody imagine an XY graph, and if along one axis I wrote the word value, and the other axis I write the word effort. Now what I can take a look at is what is the perceived value of making a phone call, going to a meeting, implementing a new workflow program. Cal, I just bought the new Kindle Fire, right? So what's the anticipated value of whatever it is that I'm thinking about or about to do? And then on the other axis, I want to track for myself, what do I anticipate the effort to be of engaging in that project, of going to that meeting, of learning that methodology, of getting up to speed with that new piece of technology. Now, in a ideal situation, the value would be high enough that almost any effort would be worth it. But I think it's fair to say that many of us on this call have been invited to projects or invited to meetings where the effort seemed so high in proportion to what we were going to gain or what we were going to get that it made for some kind of a dissonant experience. And so out of the starting gate, I'm not sure what there is to do about that effort and value structure. What I can do is, here's the easiest way I have of doing it. Take out the to-do list you have for today or the week or the quarter. Or if you don't have a running to-do list, sit down and ask yourself, between now and the end of this year, by the way, that's only 5.5 weeks away, between now and the end of this year, what is the list of 30 or 60 or 90 things that are going to need my time and energy and focus? And then what I can do is I can start to chart those 30 or 60 or 90 things. I can base how high the value is, how high the effort is, not to avoid any one side or the other. But I definitely want to keep in mind, am I doing the high value activities? Am I anticipating the kind of effort it's going to take? As a morning person, I know for me, if I can chunk off, if I can finish my higher effort activities earlier in the day, it leaves me time and energy and focus toward the end of the day to do some of those other things. So what I might do early in the day is track what are the highest value activities that are important to me, regardless of effort. And then later in the day, I may go back and find, okay, what are the lower effort things that still have some significant value? But that way I'm moving forward with all of my strengths, with all of my engagement, with all of my focus. Does that help a little bit, Kel?
Yes, can you briefly?
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together at least a blog entry, if not another webinar on that, because that's a great big topic. How do I get the team to get into a room and have a discussion around perceived effort, anticipated value, engagement all around? Cal, I think I'd be safer to say let's do that as a round two webinar.
Okay, thank you, sir.
What do you say?
Yes.
Anything else before we head off to our respective days? Well, I want to say a huge Thanksgiving thank you from here in America to everyone who's called in from Europe and the East Coast and here on the West Coast. What I'll do is I will render this short video presentation. I'll post that and send you the link, which please, if you want to watch this again or if you want to share this with anybody, that'd be fantastic. What I'm thinking of doing is running these webinars on at least a every other week, if not every week basis, up until book publication. And of course, anybody who pre-orders the book is invited to the webinar, and that includes you. I anticipate next week we might have a few more people. But thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, great day, and I'll talk to you soon.